in this environment right now where we're all pretty stressed. So that date is going to be Friday, August the 26th from 6 to 8 p.m. We'll be meeting at Glendale Church, thanks to Jay Tiff and his group providing that space. There will be an in-person opportunity and an online opportunity. This will be a free event for members. It is not considered continuing education. This is for us to take care of ourselves and each other. So we'll have some music, some snacks, some conversation, and some ideas about care for ourselves and each other. So please put it on your calendars. There'll be more information coming soon. Okay, and then just want to acknowledge that it's been a rough month, right? There's a lot going on in our world. Continued mass shootings and police shootings, committee hearings about the January 6th event, and big Supreme Court decisions. So whatever your individual personal views on all of these things, it's pretty clear that there are some seismic shifts occurring in our country. And I am sure from my conversations with clients, former clients, and colleagues, that it can feel a bit like the world is falling apart around us. So on top of all of that, personally, we as psychotherapists are holding space for that sense with all of our clients. So I wanted to just acknowledge these difficult things. And because I suggest to people that they also look at things to be grateful for, I wanted to acknowledge one bright spot in the news. I don't know how many of you saw yesterday, but Diane Nash, a prominent civil rights activist in Nashville, one of the founders of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee from back in the day, was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom yesterday. So definitely a celebration of that. If you don't know about Diane Nash, Google her. She's amazing, truly amazing. So again, with all of this happening, it's good to be together. Glad that you're here. And I wanted to, along the theme this year of community and the common good, I wanted to read some excerpts from a piece by the Reverend Anna Ladle. I'm not sure that's how you pronounce her name. She speaks to this, in my opinion. And again, this is just excerpts, but I wanted to share it with you today. Let me see if I can get rid of the got it here. Okay. So this is called, What Do You Do When Your World Falls Apart? Find and share a good thing, Alice Walker suggests. Love, of course, the source and root of it all. Love for ourselves, for each other, for the falling apart world, for life itself. Our pleasure shared, and the world's beauty savored. This is our call to worship, to life, how we survive in and through. What do you do when the world falls apart? Mary Oliver turned her attention toward grasshoppers. One particular grasshopper, in fact, alive, embodied, and in movement. Pray by paying attention, she said, strolling through fields, falling down in grass, being idle. It will bless you, she insists. Find something for which you might mumble thanks, even when sorrow and loss bear down. Move toward the grief that seems unbearable. Linger in beauty and admire kindness emerging yet. What do you do when your world falls apart? All of us, wrote Howard Thurman, want the assurance of not being deserted by life, nor deserted in life. He insisted that in order to know who we are, we must ask to whom and to what we belong. What do you do when your world falls apart? We bloom like the bearded iris. We bloom together, more beautiful because we're holding each other hand in hand. We belong here, together, to each other, to the world, neither deserted by life nor deserted in life, still and yet and always. I'd like to turn this over to Dr. Kirk Barton, who is our speaker for today. Kirk wrote about himself for the website. After completing his training, Kirk Barton returned to Nashville and has deeply enjoyed having a private psychotherapy practice for the past 23 years. I asked him if there was something more I could say, and he said, oh no, but I'm gonna anyway. Kirk is a member of the board of NPI, and he is the main person responsible this current year for curating the programs we have received. And I personally think it's been an exceptionally positive list of programs. So thank you, Kirk, for that, and welcome.
Yeah, I did get the speakers together for this year, and I had not planned to speak, but unfortunately the July speaker couldn't make it. So, you know, being the good committee leader, I stepped up. So thanks for allowing me to speak today. I would like to begin by acknowledging we psychotherapists have had a very difficult past several years with everything that has gone on. And we continue to struggle with everything that is still going on. And I personally have not been spared these stresses and setbacks in which we all share. So I would like to share with you in this talk some of the thoughts and insights about psychotherapy, which have emerged from my own struggle. But unfortunately, all that is off the table for today because that would be mansplaining. However, I'm happy to report that there's no need for me to mansplain because it's all already out there. Never has it been easier to let someone else explain what psychotherapy is. If one simply types psychotherapy into a Google video search, as I did, one immediately comes up with 5,340,000 results. As I needed to find a way out of the mansplaining conundrum, as well as a way out of the not insignificant time obligation of writing a last-minute talk, I speculated that in those 5,340,000 videos, there must be someone who I could endorse, who could explain psychotherapy for me and you, and it wouldn't hurt if they validated their method scientifically while they were at it. Yes, I could get this talk done in a jiffy. Thus, I set out to write this talk, and as usual, when one sets out to apply the quick and lazy method, one immediately realizes some important practicality has been overlooked. To find the couple of videos required to finesse this talk, I would need to come up with a quick and lazy way to find the videos I needed among those other 5,429,997 videos. Where to begin? Given the state of the world today, I pondered the fact that it is not clear I can trust or rely on myself or any of my fellow adults to solve the mental health difficulties we face today. What is needed is a new approach to psychotherapy, not burdened by all the biases and rigidities and everyday world weariness which characterizes so many of the psychotherapies today. Where would I find some new approach bespeaking some new originality? At this point, I had an epiphany which pleased me. I realized that the person I could really stand behind would be a child who, having overcome their own severe mental health setbacks, could explain how they had accomplished this feat to the world. I entered Child Explained Psychotherapy into Google. I knew I was on the right path because I hit pay dirt right away. Halfway down the first search page, I saw there was a picture of a child, a young boy. The caption printed below said, 8-year-old boy tells how he overcame his severe anxiety by inventing his own psychotherapy, followed by click here to view the video. I clicked on the video and it started to play immediately. Crispin Haynes, 8 years old in 2019, beamed back at me from the Chicago TED Talk stage. It was as if someone had taken the Dalai Lama and Steve Jobs, mixed them up together, shrunk them down, and then enrolled them in the 3rd grade at Dorothy Rayburn Elementary School outside of Chicago. As a matter of fact, Crispin pointed out his Rayburn Elementary 3rd grade classmates sitting right there in the front row of the TED Talk audience. And he graciously thanked him and his teacher for supporting him by being present that evening. Crispin stated that he had struggled with anxiety for his whole life, as far back as he could remember. In fact, he had been anxious for much of kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. Crispin proceeded to eloquently tell the TED Talk audience a story of his anxiety and how he overcame it. Well, not really overcome it, Crispin explained, because no one really comes anxiety because it is part of a lifelong struggle. And since anxiety is a lifelong struggle, and since life is short, there is no time for regrets or guilt. No one deserves anxiety. It was at that moment, 8 minutes and 31 seconds into the video, that Crispin gives you, the viewer, the rather remarkable psychotherapy program that he himself developed for himself. It was this program that allowed him, as he says, to set himself free, not from anxiety, but free with anxiety. Crispin developed for himself, after therapies, medication, yoga, and meditation didn't work for him. His parents, having some means, had found a traditional shaman in Venezuela who worked with psychedelics in children. This psychedelic treatment resulted in a miracle-like cure for 2 months, but was followed by a particularly crushing relapse. Crispin calls his own psychotherapy the Rise and Shine program. Now, I'm going to take a few minutes to explain Crispin Haynes' Rise and Shine program to you. So let me pull up my first PowerPoint slide. Here it is, audience. R, relaxation. That's yoga or meditation, etc. I, inspiration. Not breathing, but connecting with something that inspires you. Art, music, a picture, a poem. You need to familiarize yourself with how inspiration feels to you and deepen it. S, schedule. Crispin noted that intentionality was a big word with the adults around him, but he noted when he questioned them, they didn't usually have a concrete plan and they didn't make an effort. E is for effort. But Crispin realized that rising alone would not be enough. For the inevitable obstacles, setbacks, and conflicts which crop up during the day, there is shine. So I'm going to pull up my next PowerPoint slide. There it is. S and H, safely halt, be quiet and still. Inspiration, take as many breaths as you need to find your center and relax. N, notice new things. N stands for notice new things. Looking again, changing your focus, changing your perspective, and all good ways to notice new things. Asking a question is especially good to notice new things, Crispin says. E, stands for 2 things, express yourself in empathy. Crispin informs us that the reason the last letter requires 2 words is to remind us we can't do it alone. So there you have it, friends. Crispin's final words were, remember, everything in the world is one, and everything about human beings is a unity. Deep inside, all human beings want to help other human beings be less anxious. I was struck by the precocious cleverness and practicality of the psychotherapy Crispin had developed. One had the gut feeling that his therapy would be very effective. But how would his psychotherapy stand up to scientific investigation and validation? Once again, Crispin was precociously 1 step ahead of the adults. Last summer, Crispin was the youngest ever recipient of the NIMH Young Pioneers Mental Health Grant. This allowed him to perform an experiment of his own design at the NIMH Research Center in Bethesda. Crispin took anxious individuals out of some of the ongoing studies already underway at NIMH and performed an advanced FNIS, which stands for Functional Near Infrared Spectroscopy on their brains. Crispin then taught these anxious individuals his rise and shine therapy, and they all agreed to practice it for 4 weeks. After a month, Crispin rescanned these brains of the individuals, and the results were remarkable. So I'd like to put up a couple of these FNIS images, functional near infrared spectroscopy images, and review this amazing data. So here's a brain. Here's an FNIS study, 3D modeling of just the brain of a regular person starting out, anxious person starting out at the beginning of the study. I guess I'll show the audience. I think I can get this study up on the Zoom. There it is. So this is the before, and now I'm going to pull up the after. And what's amazing is, you know, at the front of the brain is the Serenity Center located in the frontal left lower cortex. And you'll see on this study that it lights up red after after 4 weeks of the studies. It's just, I mean, this is a remarkable finding that really underscores the empirical basis of Crispin's study. Here, hold it up for me. I mean, this data, really, everyone should see it. So here it is. Here's the brain. This is the study, the FNIS study. This is now after 4 weeks, and you'll see the Serenity Center's located right here. And it lights up red on this study, you know, and this data is just amazing. I mean, this kid's going to get the Nobel Prize. Now let's compare Crispin's images with the scans of another NIMH study. This one showed, here we go, let me pull it up. This one shows scans of the brains of Amazonian shamans on ayahuasca being taught Buddhism by Tibetan monks. And you'll notice the exact same part of the brain lights up on this study. I mean, it's just blows my mind. Crispin Haynes' video is one of 5,340,000 videos, which attests to the fact that everyone knows all about psychotherapy. Nowhere is the diversity of human wisdom better represented than in internet videos about psychotherapy. In these videos, there are men, women, transgender people, non-binary people. They're all the races and colors and cultures and ethnic groups of the world. They're all the world's wisdom traditions, philosophers, Buddhists, Christians, Jews, scientists, atheists, Native American medicine men, shamans and druids, to name a few. Do I think that I could watch any number of these 5,340,000 videos on psychotherapy, a collection which doubtlessly includes a number of dazzling and brilliant formulations, and that after watching these videos, I would finally be able to answer the question, what is psychotherapy? Not at all. Do I think if the human race became extinct and a new super intelligent species evolved and a new civilization rose, and after these individuals all watched the 5,340,000 videos, which would only take a few days with their super insectoid brains, that these super intelligent beings would be able to answer the question, what is psychotherapy? Not at all. Do we in our time have an answer to the question of what we really mean by the word psychotherapy? Not at all. If one judges by the overall worldwide decline in mental health as measured by every metric of society and the psychotherapists themselves. So is it fitting that we should raise anew the question, what is psychotherapy? Are we nowadays even perplexed at our inability to understand the expression psychotherapy? Not at all. A dogma has taken shape, which not only declares the question of the meaning of the term psychotherapy superfluous, but even sanctions its neglect. It is said that psychotherapy is the most universal of concepts. Everyone uses it constantly and also already understands it. Thus, the question, which bewildered early psychotherapists and kept them so by virtue of its obscurity, has become obvious, clear as day, such that whoever persists in asking about it is accused of an error of method. Today, everyone seems to have been long aware of what they mean when they use the expression psychotherapy. I, however, used to think I understood it, have now become perplexed. And yet, casting about in my memory over the past 30 years, I can remember a time when I too thought I knew the answer to the question, what is psychotherapy? The years have gone by, but that yesterday is as fresh in my mind as today. Whatever else I might repent of, let it be reckoned neither among my sins nor among my follies that I once had faith and force enough to form generous hopes of a world destiny shaped by psychotherapy. Yes, and to do what lay in me for their accomplishment. Even quitting a comfortable abode in Nashville and traveling to Boston in order to enroll in the Cambridge Hospital Adult Community Psychiatry Program. Boston, the Cambridge Hospital Community Psychiatry Program, 1994. The AIDS epidemic was going full tilt. And although sickness was stalking the streets, hip hop was being born in the big cities of the Northeast, and the psychiatry residents were caught up in it. For myself, I was on fire with it. I was hard. I was streetwise. If you tried to come too close, I could cut you. All the psychiatry residents were like that in those days. You'd be a psychiatry resident doing your first year inpatient rotation. They'd let you onto the lock ward, and the chief resident would come around the corner and make you throw down right there in front of the patients and staff. The chief resident would throw out a DSM diagnosis category like anxiety disorders, and you'd have to spit the entire category. You'd have to freestyle the DSM anxiety disorders right off the top of your head in less than a minute, right then and there. I mean, flat out, the entire category of DSM anxiety disorders in less than a minute. Like this, step back, hip, hop, hippity hop, hip hop, hippity hop, hip, hop, hippity hop, hip hop, hippity hop. Oh, my mic. That's when your mouse goes out. Let's take a quick look into the DSM-5, anxiety disorders. They plague the alive. Panic disorders come on in a flash. Generalized anxiety disorders turn the whole day into trash. Selective mutism, so anxious you can't talk. Agoraphobia hits you while outside on a walk. Separation and social, both anxiety disorders, problems on both sides of the other people border. If you want to blame your body, here's where you go fishing. Anxiety disorder due to a medical condition. Specified anxiety and unspecified anxiety disorder catches everything, keeps the system in order. Anxiety producing psych disorders that I should not fail to mention. OCD, PTSD, and major depression. A list of medication causes is a very long petition, includes asthma, hormones, and a heart condition. One cause is embarrassing, but I'm not going to lie to you. Anxiety due to your medications your doctor's already prescribed to you. Brain pathology, about that we could talk for days, but too much of that will cause your eyes to glaze. Caused by brain chemistry or brain structure, that's all you need to know. And with that note about pathology, onto treatment we'll go. Psychodynamic psychotherapy will sort out your calamity. Anxiety is caused by your past or your family. CBT therapy teaches calming habits can be taught. CBT therapy teaches negative thinking can be fought. If these two don't help you, it's exposure therapy's turn. Pushes you in the deep end of the pool. You dog paddle till you learn. Of course, medications, cornucopia, pharmacopoeia. New meds roll out every day. Maybe there's hope for you. About medications, don't mean to be cynical, but life's a puzzle and not just chemicals. The choice for many, perhaps the most frequent, they diss the experts and rely on self-treatment, bibliotherapy and affirmations, guided imagery and meditation, workbooks, yoga and other self-care, massage and healthy friendships for them that dare. aromatherapy for a relaxing fog, or spirituality, or an English sheepdog. But don't say you're self-medicating, let this doctor be frank. That's like saying you're self-financing by robbing a bank. There's always a new treatment, and we shrieks will invent it, but the best approach to anxiety is to try and prevent it. Reduce your caffeine, but don't lay around like slugs. Get adequate sleep, curb the alcohol and drugs. Get along with people, communicate, don't fight. Educate yourself, eat and exercise right. So hip hop, hippity hum, that's about it. My anxiety rap is done. Yes, we had swagger in those days. However, our teachers and guides had a different conception of the DSM, which was DSM-3 at that time. Although there were no computers or managed care involvement in outpatient psychotherapy when I trained, our instructors correctly divined that a ready-made inventory of classifications of our customers would be used as a tool to serve the ends of corporations, governmental regulation, acclaim-seeking parts of the academic community, and the malpractice industry, as well as the swarms of well-meaning but misguided hucksters out there, to name a few. Some of our teachers felt that revisions of the DSM would continue until there was a diagnosis for everyone on the planet. To them, the DSM project in many ways presaged our own current social project, trying to unify humanity by identifying what's wrong with everyone. The more metaphysical among our teachers disagreed with this prediction. They claimed that once you start counting and sorting, you never run out of things to count and sort. Counting and sorting are infinite tasks. My residency rector, Leston Havens, had his own way of applying the DSM to patients, which he described as follows. Les, as he liked to be called, stated that the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual affords the best window into the emotional experience of the patient. For this reason, Les highly recommends reading the DSM, preferably in bed. As you encounter the systematic taxonomy, which represents the cutting-edge scientific insights of the psychiatric profession, you will find yourself lulled into a deep slumber, and the bound volume of the most recent DSM will slip and come to rest on your chest. Shortly thereafter, you will awaken with a start, short of breath, with palpitations, a crushing weight bearing down on your sternum. And as you heave the weighty tone onto the floor, your emotional state at that moment will closely approximate the emotional state of one of your patients in crisis. Yes, there were jokesters among them, but they held unswervingly to the credo. Science is real, but pseudoscience is believable. And magic is real too, as long as it stays a thought. Generally speaking, our teachers weren't worried that much about magic in those days, but they did feel we needed to learn to shelter ourselves, our work, and our patients from pseudoscience. Our instructors realized that in order to teach us how to protect ourselves from pseudoscience, they would have to get us to appreciate what is pseudo about real science itself. They posed the following question to us. What happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas, but what happens in psychiatry, where does it happen? They approach this question as both a playful speculation and as the most solemn of duties. For example, right here, smack dab in the middle of reality is a stack of 4 books. There can only be one book, which is the 4th book in the stack, and here it is. I'm going to show folks. So there can only be 1, 2, 3, 4. There can only be one 4th book in the stack. The identity of being number 4 can only belong to this book and cannot be shared. Yet one could take this book apart, reduce it to some subatomic particles, and you would never find the number 4 in it. You cannot find an object called a number in this book or anywhere else for that matter, even though this is unquestionably the 4th book in this stack. Similarly, as the philosopher Leibniz pointed out, you could blow the brain up to the size of a planet and have all your scientists explore it with their best tools and instruments, and they would never be able to find the mind and point it out to you. I could take this brain and divide it up into 4 pieces, and we could all bet on which of the parts contain the mind. And then we could divide those parts into other parts and those parts into other parts, and the bet would never be settled. And one begins to see that, like numbers, the mind is either everywhere or it is nowhere. But most importantly, you'll never be able to point those things out as objects, let alone grasp them and examine them. So if you want to build psychotherapy on solid ground, paradoxically, you will not be able to base it on the mind or thoughts. Thus, in the first year of my residency, the inpatient year, my teachers cultivated in me one of the most fertile confusions I had ever experienced in my life. Along with the other psychotherapy or psychiatry residents, I spent the year looking for that solid ground on which to base my lifelong work as a psychotherapist. I didn't need to look far. One day, early in the first year of my residency, I walked onto the locked ward, which I found to be in an uproar because a very angry patient with borderline personality disorder had barricaded herself in her room and was peering out menacingly from behind the stack of furniture in the doorway. The staff was considering doing a mattress restraint, where 4 people run at the patient and pin them to a wall with a mattress and then put the patient into restraints. One of the community psychiatrists, a tall, thin, elderly man with a twinkle in his eye, overheard the ward staff. He didn't think the mattress restraint option was a good idea and offered to help. I watched him approach the patient and speak quietly with her. I couldn't quite make out what he was saying, but I hear him say finally, very slowly and gently, and this is true story, "You are a baby." At that point, the patient burst into tears and Dr. Ackerly proceeded to help the patient put her hospital room back in order. I was stunned and awed by this performance, and immediately I asked Dr. Ackerly to be my supervisor. He advised me I should try the "you are a baby" technique myself. So the next time I had a confrontation with an angry borderline patient, I dutifully complied with his instruction. This is a true story too. I said, "You're a baby." What? I said, "You're a baby." What did you say? Don't worry about it. It was nothing. No, I want to hear what you said. I said, "You're a baby." No, you're the baby. What do you think? That I'm your mother? You can talk to me that way? You wouldn't dare talk that way to a man. I'm going right now and file a complaint with the head of the psychiatry department and the head of the hospital. And then she stormed out. True story. When I told Dr. Ackerly about my tone-deaf attempt to emulate his technique, he was not concerned. Although he could see that I held collective humanity in rather low regard. He could also see that it was not hard for me to become fond of our customers and admire them. He saw that imagining positive possibilities for our customers came rather easy and spontaneously for me. Thus he felt some natural aptitude for the work lay beneath my numerous technical bumbles. Dr. Ackerly believed that although anyone could be interested in another person for a myriad of reasons, one could only truly be curious about another human being if one was fond of them. He considered true human curiosity one of the highest virtues. Fondness and curiosity had sustained his work for 50 years. Dr. Ackerly had been in psychiatry long enough to remember a time when there were no special medications for psychiatric illnesses. He said the work in those days was guided by the words of the Boston psychiatrist Harry Stack Sullivan, quote, "We are more human than otherwise." We spent a lot of time with the patients, Dr. Ackerly said, because frankly, there wasn't much else to call treatment in those days. And we found ourselves becoming friends with patients. Strangely enough, that seemed to have some therapeutic efficacy. Throughout the 20th century, with its immense turmoil in society, ideology, and science, Dr. Ackerley's generation of psychiatrists were sustained by the belief that psychotherapy consisted mainly of being human in human situations. They were humanistic psychologists with a lowercase h. Dr. Ackerly had seen empires of psychotherapeutic and psychiatric treatment modalities rise and fall. And this made him the perfect person to teach me rule number 1 of community outpatient adult psychiatry, which is as follows. The task of psychiatry is to take a dysfunctional person with problems and turn them into a functional person with problems like the rest of us. That's the first rule. Dr. Ackerly also helped me make sense of rule number two of psychiatry. Rule number 2 was articulated first by Sigmund Freud in his first book, Studies on Hysteria, published in 1895, and I quote, "It is quite hopeless to penetrate directly to the nucleus of the pathogenic organization. Even if we ourselves could guess it, the patient would not know what to do with the explanation offered to them, and they would not be psychologically changed by it." Freud's jargon-heavy pronouncement has been distilled by generations of psychiatrists down to the following somewhat more pithy statement: everyone knows better than a psychiatrist until they don't. Dr. Ackerly stated that rule number 2 was not a setback to the psychotherapeutic work, but rather rule number 2 succinctly highlighted what is actually at stake in the psychotherapeutic encounter. Dr. Ackerly explained that when we sit in a room with a patient, there are actually 3 people in the room: me and you and you. This is between you and you. Said Dr. Ackerly, "I tell my patients that I know the world is on fire outside of this room, but my job isn't to put those fires out for you. My job is to help you figure out why you are lighting them." True. Although I rotated some of my supervisors, I kept Dr. Ackerly as my supervisor for my entire 4 years of training. I can't say that I ever mastered his technique, but somehow he occasionally managed to say a sentence or two over those 4 years that have stuck with me till today. One day I was sitting with Dr. Ackerly in supervision. I asked him how he defined maturity. Without a pause and with a twinkle in his eye, he replied, "You and me here together." It was hazy at that time, but I began to see that the frame of psychotherapy, the underlying structure of psychotherapy, consists of a slight modification of the bedrock commitments of collaborative adulthood. Adulthood not as a civic privilege or a biodevelopmental state, but as an existential human resource with broad application. As I stated before, I was taught that if you want to build psychotherapy on solid ground, paradoxically, you will not be able to base it on the mind or thoughts. And herein lies the true genius of Freud's initial articulation of the psychotherapeutic method. He placed great emphasis on the power of the human developmental arc. The solid ground on which Freud constructed the psychotherapeutic frame is a real material object which can be pointed out and even grasped and handled. And that material object is called a real grown-up. A real grown-up is the material embodiment, the instantiation of human maturity. A real grown-up is able to provide the necessary regularity and reliability that reality itself is unable to provide for human beings. I'm going to finish today by honoring my 3rd grade teacher, Miss McGill. It is because of her and her 3rd grade unit on Hawaii that I still mispronounce the name of the great Hawaiian king, Kamehameha, instead of properly as Kamehameha. Miss McGill stated that any presentation you give to the class should always end with a joke and a point. I'll do the joke first. This is an old psychiatry joke, and one of the few you can still get away with telling today. And here it is. What is the difference between a grown-up dancing elephant performing centering at the circus and a grown-up human being? Anyone know? The grown-up human being has to clean up his own elephant shit. Boy, those were good jokes. Now the poem. It's more accurately a metaphysical lyric, whatever that is. Some of you may have read it before, but I couldn't resist reciting it today, given the topic of today's discussion. It is titled Ode to Real Grown-Ups. It goes like this. Ode to Real Grown-Ups. You are still here. Barely true. Human truths are often like that. Barely true is true nevertheless. Barely true is true enough. You are still here. Every day is every day. This is every day. Real grown-ups are showing up. In a peaceful place, grown-ups show up calm, relaxed, kind, ready to help out, not wanting anyone to get hurt. These are skills that can only be learned, can only be improved through practice literally every day. And in peaceful spaces, real grown-ups do practice every day. Right now, we are here together in a peaceful space. In a peaceful space, each grown-up is responsible for acknowledging the fact, for maintaining the fact that he or she is not in a combat zone. In combat zones, we fight bad people. In peaceful spaces, mostly we fight bad ideas, bad choices, bad habits, not bad people. In many spaces, it's hard to know where the past ends and the present begins. It's hard to know where memory ends and the body begins. It's hard to handle what one cares about. It is hard to know what is real. Here, in peaceful spaces, questions about what is real can be relentless. Am I awake or am I dreaming? Is this now or is this then? Is this me or is this you? Did I find this or am I causing this? Can I choose how I feel? Don't be trapped by intoxicating misinformation or misinforming intoxication. Reality always arrives on time. Seek your best self, serve your best self. Every step of your journey begins with a step in the mind. Be still in a still place. Take care of your thoughts before you demand your thoughts take care of you. Take a deep breath. Take the breath that is true. Everything thinks for itself when the mind is calm. Everything takes care of itself when the body is relaxed. The goal is to settle down enough to understand. We are like that. Showing up relaxed, calm, kind, the appropriate and proper comportment of a real grown-up in peaceful space. Learn by setting aside time every day, practicing showing up relaxed and calm for yourself. Take care of your thoughts before you demand your thoughts take care of you. This will teach you how to take care of other people before you demand that other people take care of you. In peaceful spaces, as you move to make yourself fit for joining us in asking the question, who am I? Begin by making certain that whoever you are, that person is a good person. In order to be certain that you are a good person, make certain that you are a real grown-up, because a real grown-up is a good person by definition. It is hard to endure the question, who am I? Even in peaceful spaces, answers to this question are hard to find. However, in peaceful spaces, it is not hard to try to be a real grown-up because responsibilities are always easy to find. The responsibilities never stop. The responsibilities start right now if you want to be a real grown-up. Because a real grown-up is a good person by definition. Who am I for real? In peaceful spaces, serve your best self. Learn and practice being a grown-up, and you may come to know what is real. Because what is real will find you. Because reality always arrives on time. Be true, be like reality, be real and arrive on time. It is hard to trust other people when you have emotions and impossible when you don't. Thank you. That's it, folks. Any questions, thoughts?
Thank you.
You're welcome.